Hey, this is Pastor Dave, and this is your Monday Mojo. Hope you had a great weekend. First snow of the season. You know, that cheers me up. So this is your classic Monday Mojo. And if you don't know what that means, several years ago, talking with a fellow named Troy Hanna, I told him, I said, sometimes I don't always get to say everything I want to say on a Sunday morning, just from time constraints. And he said, well, why don't you do kind of a Monday morning wrap up and send it out there at the beginning of the day? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. And so we came up with the name Monday Mojo, and that's how it started. And of course, it's turned into something a lot different than that. But today is your classic Monday Mojo, because yesterday I spent some time talking about the year of Jubilee. Now, some of you may know what that means, and some of you may not know what that means. But in the Old Testament, it's a story. It's interesting because in the Old Testament there are a lot of promises, there are a lot of foreshadowings of who this Messiah is going to be. And there are a lot of foreshadowings on the story, the complete story of God, that come to find their fulfillment in Jesus. So for instance, in the Old Testament, people took a lamb to sacrifice. A lamb was sacrificed and the blood was put over the door to keep them safe during the Passover. And so Jesus becomes the Lamb of God. He becomes the final sacrifice. And so aren't you glad that you don't have to take a lamb to church to be sacrificed every time you go? And so Jesus becomes the fulfillment. He becomes the coming true of a lot of those foreshadowings. And one of those foreshadowings is the year of Jubilee. Now, what happened in the year of Jubilee is that God gave a way of life to the people of Israel. He said, every seventh year, I want you to let your land, your crops lay fallow, because I'll take care of you, and it's a Sabbath year. It's a year of rest for the land. Now, it's interesting because agricultural experts say that's a great thing to do. God knows what he's doing, huh? Anyway, then he said after the seventh of 7 years, the 50th year, that'd be the Jubilee year. He said, and in that year, something else happens. The land lays fallow, but if at any point during that time you had to sell some of your property in order just to make it in life, you got that property back in the year of Jubilee. Or even if you had to sell yourself just to keep the things going and become a slave, you were freed in the year of Jubilee. So debts were canceled and slaves were set free in the year of Jubilee. Now, here's the interesting thing. There's no real hard evidence that Israel ever lived by the year of Jubilee the way God prescribed it, And that's a testament to our human nature to want to hold on to things. This is mine. But think about that. If they would have done that, what an amazing arrangement it would have been for life. But there's just no real hard evidence that they ever did that. And I understand. I understand. You looked at me and said, okay, Dave, after the 50 years of your accumulation, now you got to give it all back and start over again with everybody else. That might be kind of hard to do. But what if it's true, as some scholars believe, that Jesus is the fulfillment, the coming true of the year of Jubilee in our lives? In other words, all the debts are canceled. How would that feel? And I don't mean financially necessarily. I mean all the things that we owe to God, to other people, ways that we should have acted, things that we should have said, things that we shouldn't have said, things that become debts in our hearts, they've been canceled in Jesus. And that slavery we have to sin, Paul says, that which I want to do, I don't do, and that which I don't want to do, I keep on doing. Know that feeling? It's January, everybody's talking about that feeling. In Jesus, we get set free from a sense of regret or shame over that. And we get to live in the year of Jubilee, the year of Jesus. Now, here's the deal. I'm not sure that there's any real hard evidence that I do that a lot. I don't know about you, but I keep on living in that, as I said yesterday, that you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout. I'm telling you why. He's keeping a list and checking it twice, going to find out who's naughty and nice. I keep on living there. Instead of in the place where all my debts have been canceled. and I've been set free to live a free life of gratefulness and joyfulness as a follower and friend and servant of Jesus. So I want this year, and I'm going to start by this day, to be a year of Jubilee, a day of Jubilee, where I live in freedom from all of that. And you can too. So anyway, that's what I really wanted to wrap up from Sunday. That's your Monday Mojo. This is the day of Jubilee. Have a great week.